welcome to our new program, The Valley's People. This is a program in which we will meet up to 50 people from the Hunter Valley who've contributed in some way to our current lifestyle, our entertainment, our sporting influences, and has made this valley what it is today. Now, in our first program, we're going to meet from Alabama, one of the long-running radio personalities in this area, and from Merriweather, a lady who rather changed protocol at Government House receptions. Hope you can stay with us. My first guest, Matthew Tapp. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Ron, would you kill me? Multimedia.
Well, it's really true, you know.
Well, it's radio. I wait on Boy Scout performances, Victoria Theatre, right?
Right.
Radio, TV. The only press writing has virtually been boys' school magazines and this sort of thing, but I'll accept multimedia.
And then,
I'd be too glad to.
No, then you've got that chance of people who've seen you perform at their wedding breakfast and their 21st birthday party.
This is media.
That's media.
Well, if you'd have said entertainment, sure. Well, after all, it's entertainment's media in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Matt, I think most people of late would remember you for Openline for many years on 2KO. Mm. I guess you were never really an Openline crusader, but did you achieve any goals that you set out for in the program as far as the Valley is concerned? Do you have any achievements? How did you react to it?
Well, I loved Openline. I loved Openline because it wasn't the strong, strident Sydney style of, or national television Openline. To me, it was Newcastle Openline. It was letting the people say what they wanted to say, playing the middle of the road. I did that on purpose. Sometimes you'd get the crits saying, oh, you should punch harder, but that's not my job. My job was to talk to, let people talk to us and give their thoughts. One particular, I don't know whether it's a crusade or not, but one that rings a bell with me, and as a matter of fact, I had fairly solid reaction. As you know, it was mostly entertainment. I used to say it was basically entertainment, and if it could get a message across of good to the community, beaut. Well, and that's what it was a strange thing. Can I tell you how it started?
Yeah, sure.
Right. Fine, well, I'd sort of bowed out of the media, multimedia. I'd bowed out of TV and all the rest of it, and I was interested in little businesses, and I had a garage, and with Caltech's garage at Charlestown, which was good business. And I was sort of learning real estate again after many years, and I had a phone call from a bloke named Clem Dermon, who you'll remember well, because he was your manager at one stage at 2KO, and he said, Dig, it's time to come back into the media. I don't know, do you remember Clem? Was
that that's just the voice too.
Dig, it's time to come back into the media. So I said, well, you know, make the incentive reasonable, and we'd love it, because I was missing it. Anyhow, he said, have you heard a thing called Openline? Do you know what? I'd never heard it. Really? No, it had been running on HD with Eddy Webster at that stage, but I'd never heard the program because I'd divorced myself entirely from TV, from radio. But, and I thought, no, I'm not going to hear it either. I'll just do it my way. Tell me what they want. Anyhow, what kicked off as a half hour for a 6 months trial went for an hour and a half for 9 years. Yeah. And the time flew by. Back to the highlight. One of the highlights which will be remembered in Newcastle, other than when daylight saving came in and the little old lady, you know, the typical little old, and this is true, this is the typical little old lady, made the point of saying, no, Mr. Tapp, all that daylight saving, you know, the usual business, I don't like it. Well, why don't you like it? No, all that extra sunlight will ruin me curtains. Oh, no. And that is as true as I'm sitting here. And I reread it later in Sydney Press and all the other as if it had originated somewhere else, but it was one of the locals.
It's like the story of the person who got the cheap car from the widow. It went right round Australia, I think, for every Openline personality that was on air.
Sure.
Incredible.
The other one was a beauty. Reverend Alan Walker, I'd read his articles, I'd admired his stuff. I thought he was a little strong, a little too biased, I thought, in his attitude towards, well, not so much morals, but alcohol and the approach to life, family life. But anyhow, we were doing a very pleasant interview. I was loving it. It was early in the morning. It was a 9:30 job, and he'd been out the night before with his crusade. But anyhow, I happened to misuse a word, which was easy to do. Instead of saying, now look, Reverend Walker, I think you're a bit hard. I like a glass of beer, which I do. I love a beer, and that's what I used. I love a beer. Well, did he get into me? You have used the word love in association with alcohol, and it was on. So we had a very interesting, what was going to be a good, quiet message for the Valley, developed into a bottler. And after 12 minutes, I gather, with me saying, and you think that I'm not a Christian because I enjoy a cold glass of ale? I kept calling it bitter and mild and draft, and anyhow, that was one of the highlights. But what I loved about it was the different reaction. Now, I finished it at the studio, and the first always to greet you were the taxi boys, and when you come out, they'd go, oh, mate, did you give it to him? But the other reaction from the other side of the community was, I thought it was terrible. You should never have spoken to the Reverend like that. And also the other reaction from some of the Methodist group of that stage said, thank you. It is time that somebody spoke as to the feelings of the middle-class Newcastle person, the person that is trying to echo the feelings that maybe he is a bit hard. Now, and to me, that was a bit of a crusade.
Yes. Had you met subsequent to that matter? What's your relationship with Alan Walker?
Oh, no worries. We talked when the thing was over, he said, well, I think that achieved a very good message, Mr. Tapp. And I said, I'm sure it did, Reverend. So
I'm sure it did.
No worries.
I remember tuning in one afternoon to hear you on 2KO play, I think it was Harold Ramsey at the pipe organ on the 12th Street Rag.
Yes.
And that was
I was a rebel, fellas.
Quite the swingiest thing that's ever happened in Newcastle
I was
radio
an absolute rebel, Ron. Yeah, with that.
Yeah. This live radio, Matt, in those particular days, and you were, I think, king of live radio, community singing and so on. Was this your interest always?
I think yes, entertainment, yes.
Really?
Basically entertainment. Live radio was beaut. Nowhere near the technical worries that this media has, but I tell you what, in that period I would say that if some of the young blokes today, and by the way, I'm not speaking as the old, gnarled, grizzled veteran, because to me there's nothing worse than getting advice from the blokes who did it before and you should do it this way. I'm against it. I say give every young bloke his own role to play, but if they could get a bit of the experience that era had, when one had to write the comedy gags and really write them, or rewrite what was sent in to you, and have your rehearsals, play your dialect parts from Scotch to Irish to, Guten Himmel and all the rest of it, and Australia, all the accents, the dialects, and then go on without any practice, just, oh, that'll do, let's try that, bang, and you're on, and you're an hour before your group, and sitting in the group of the same faces every week.
Shelling peas.
Knitting.
Yes.
Well, you've been through it.
Right.
But no, it was good experience, tremendous experience, and at the same time, it was great entertainment for that era.
Yeah,
that era.
What, a shilling or something, wasn't it?
I forget.
Yeah, very cheap, whatever it was.
I forget, yeah. No, I forget what it...
And that was what, the Victoria Theatre or Lyric Theatre or one of them?
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I was speaking then of the lunchtime shows. That was in our own studio, but then, agreed. Then we went to... out into the Victoria Theatre, as it was then, and not a great deal at the Victoria. The Victoria was too big. It was basically out to the Roxy at Hamilton. Roxy, much as I love TV and the blokes and the work they do, which is tremendous, we used to have to do the bit on camera, on microphone, while the act was on, race up a ladder, change the lights, I'm telling you, get the PA ready for the next mimers with a big thing, the Andrews sisters.
Yeah, right.
It was great. It was great.
And I don't know how long it is that I've known you, but it's a long while. I think you've taught me everything in radio that I ever knew.
Well, I appreciate that, Ron. If a little bit has rubbed off onto you,
it sure has.
I'm delighted because you're a good pro.
But I've really never had you in this situation before.
No.
And I guess I've dropped a hint on numerous occasions to really find out how you lost that leg. Matthew Tapp one leg. Now, you get it back in all sorts of versions, such as it was saved by a very pretty German nurse and a British doctor, and you were a POW.
I didn't realise that it created such a dilemma.
Yeah, really.
No, truly.
I guess the dilemma is caused by the fact that no one really knows the story. Now, once and for all, how did you lose the leg in the war?
All right, Hursty, I'll tell you, you've brought up a subject I never discuss, basically because I feel no need to discuss it. But that was my feeling early in the piece after losing a limb during war. But as I grew older and my family grew older, I found that they wanted to know and the youngsters wanted to know, because you are a bit of a freak. If you're on crutches and you have a limb dangling, the kids have to have an answer. So I made up all sorts of stories about the elephants and the crocodiles and the Zambezi River. But what it boiled down, well, you know, this is growing up with your family. Now, what it boiled down to, I'm extremely fortunate. I mean, seriously, you've asked me a serious question, and I'll lay it on the line.
Yeah, I want you to.
If you weren't doing this interview, if it wasn't you, I don't care who else, I wouldn't appreciate the question. Now, that's okay. I wouldn't appreciate the question, but I know that in all sincerity, you want to bring a little bit of the background of the Valley's people. And I was an aircrew bomber, a bomb aimer in Lancasters, and I was on a mission over a place in... I've even forgotten the name, mate. That's, you know, it's gone. But it was the French-German border at a time that the buzz bombs were on. And we had a buzz bomb site, and we were a late over target because of wrong Met information. And we had a second Dickie, a pilot training him on his first. What a lovely one for his first. And the next thing I know was, bang, a bit of a problem with flak, as they called it then, the enemy aircraft. A great big gaping hole in the left-hand front where I'd just started my bombing run, and me looking around and seeing my foot about 5 feet away up the other end of the cabin. Mid-upper was knocked about, and in fact, I think he saved my life. I think he helped me apply the tourniquet. Then they tell me nature took over, and they tell me we turned around and we dropped our bombs, and I got a bit of recognition out of it, and that's about it, mate. But all this business of German nurses, and I tell you what, there were some bloody lovely English nurses that were very kind, but that's what it was all about.
I'm glad you could.
One of the highlights, mate, away from that, and I think this helped me, was seeing Barder, Douglas Barder, who was all our hero then, and I'll never forget him because...
He lost both,
Yes, he'd lost both legs, Ron, and had been a German POW, and when I was getting my limb fitted in England, having been on... The other foot was badly knocked about too. It was in plaster and knocked about for a long while. Had to do grafts and things. But was seeing Barder drive up in a red MG and roll towards us like a sea captain, because he's both amputee. But that's the story, mate. That's nothing. And as I say, count my blessings. Yeah. Count my blessings. My two closest Newcastle, this is Valley people, closest Newcastle blokes didn't come back.
No. And 35 years later, with a new generation, would you be a pacifist now?
I would think twice. I would say, in hindsight, whatever I did then, I would do again. I don't think, and this question has been put to me by some extremely intelligent, beaut young kids, and from university and other places, knowing that I, you know, had not suffered it compared to others, but I had experienced wartime at its harshest. I don't know, Ron. It would depend on circumstances.
Right.
It would depend on circumstances. I had a letter while I was in hospital in England, lying on my back with Polish boys alongside me, Czechs, Canadians, and I had a letter from a pacifist friend in radio in Australia, and I didn't appreciate that letter at that time. But again, in hindsight, in retrospect, he had his views. He had his views.
Matt, I'm proud to be your friend.
Nice
Thank you.
To be with you.
And in just a moment, we're going to meet a lady who's very much the life of the party. And welcome back. Our next guest is a Merryweather lady who went to Government House in Sydney to receive an MBE, and things quite haven't been the same since. My next guest is Alice Ferguson. Hello, Alice.
Hello, Ron. How are you?
What's this story about Lamingtons and scones? And I'm not quite sure.
Well, there was Richie Bonneau, Judge Curlews, and Dr. Fanny Cohen. We all received our MBEs together.
Right.
And we were very hungry. We'd been all day, you know, fussing around trying to get to this business, so we got there all right. But when we finished, we went out in the gardens. We thought we were going to have a lovely afternoon tea, and behold, fresh air. That's all we had. We didn't have a jolly thing to eat.
Oh, really?
So the next day I wrote to Government House and I just told them what I thought about their government. because I thought it was pretty important if they couldn't give a few hundred people that were there and their guests something to eat. But
there's a price for notoriety.
yes,
Everything's
there
changed.
is. But friends of mine that have been there since have had the fat of the land. They've had everything that you can imagine from there too, so it must have done a bit of good. So I hope so, anyhow.
Well, I hope these friends have written to you to thank you.
Yeah.
There's something always fascinated me about an MBE, Alice. I hope you don't mind me asking.
No.
But now, a lot of people say it's all prearranged and you know. How is somebody advised about receiving an MBE? How were you advised?
Well, I was going to Bowles one day and I was walking along and I've got a big manila folder, like an envelope, and I thought, oh, another one of those silly Reader's Digest, you know, and I was going to throw it away. So I got to the gate, I thought, oh, I'll read this, it might be another book I can give my son, you know, something special. So I opened it up and it said, the words were like this: could you kindly notify Canberra if you'd like to accept the MBE? So, and I wasn't to tell anyone, and me talking all the time, it nearly killed me. So when I went into Bowles, there was hundreds of people at Bowles and I couldn't talk to anyone. So I saw the cleaner there, so I told her. I told the cleaner, and then I buzzed over to the post office and sent the wire away to say I would accept it with pleasure. But had I thrown it away like I was going to, I still wouldn't have had my MBE.
So Meriwether lady would have refused MBE.
Yeah, that's right,
yes.
yeah.
On behalf of Reader's Digest.
On behalf of
That's
Reader's
incredible.
Digest.
Now, because there are a lot of people who think that you know in advance and it's all prearranged, but you had no idea.
No,
of that.
only a month before, a month after I received it, I went to Government House and this Cedar, we had, it's quite an experience there. It was Richie Bonneau, Judge Coulis and Dr. Fanny Kahn. We all sat in a row and we had our little brochure there to go by. And then the Major Domino comes in and teaches the men how to bow and puts this little thing on their chest, just something like this, to hang the medal on. And then the lady in waiting came in and taught us how to bow. Oh, I said, well, I'll help you. I'm a dancing teacher.
Teaching you how to curtsy?
Yeah, curtsy,
I
yeah.
don't believe it.
Dr. Fanny Cohen, she's a very big woman, a Jewess she was, an enormous woman in a big fur coat, you know, all dolled up. She said, I know I'll damn well fall over. And she did. The Major Domino banged the floor with the thing. He said, you had to come in, and she tripped. All the people on the top of the stage all had a giggle, but it was a funny show, but a happy one, you know. But only for getting something to eat, I thought it was very good.
You know, Alice, normally the NBE presentation is quite serious. The only difference was you were there, you know.
Yeah.
You got yours for service to the community.
That's right.
You know,
yeah.
I think if anyone would get an MBE, that's probably the best category to get it in. And this is a result of swimming.
Yep.
24,000 people is the estimate of the number of people you have taught
So
to
the
swim.
press say, I wouldn't...
Well, I was going to ask you about that because that works out at something like 450 a year. Would that be right?
Oh, sometimes I do more than that. Other times I won't do as many. But I've certainly been a busy girl. 50 years I've been teaching last week.
Meriwether bars, all that time?
Yeah. Oh, the Meriwether bars weren't built then. There was a little 9-footer at the end of the surf. I was to teach them that, and the old sewer pipe at the end of the bars, you know, dive from there to a little rock. But all the same, the kids learned, irrespective where the pool was. But it was in 1939, I think, we got that big pool.
Alice, were these all children, or in that 20,000?
Subnormals, people in wheelchairs, and deaf and dumb and blind, ordinary people, just you and I, kids, babies. But after all, I don't think there's one I failed with. The oldest one was 79, and the youngest was about, that I take now, is 8 months old.
Young babes. There's a story that a lot of swimming instructors believe in taking people very young to swim. And there's also that story, which seems rather horrid to me, of just picking a young babe up and throwing them in the water.
Oh,
Do you
I kill
subscribe
those
to that?
people, I don't. No, gosh, I teach with love and kindness. I can't stand that approach to swimming. Gosh, a kid, fancy throwing a little baby in the water, you know. I just get them in the water, put my hand over their legs and hand underneath their tummy, and off we go. I just ask them little questions, you know, they've got a dog, and I say, no. Got a cat? No. Till you eventually find out what they've got, and Bob's your uncle. You're right then. Everything's, you know, I seem to do real good. Because the babies take a lot longer than older children. But I think they learn enough to survive if they fell in a pool.
Even now, with all these things, I met someone who was in fact just a patient recently at the Royal Newcastle Hospital who said Alice arrived there every Friday to talk to us. How do you have time to do all that?
No, I'm a peak lady, so I'm on duty at Ward 6 and 7 every Friday. So it's my wards, 2 wards, and I go around and talk to all the old people and tell them my yarn and, you know, fiddle with their hair and fix their lockers and just, because I mean, I tell a yarn to some of them that, you know, that look a bit as if they want cheering up, and but it's really lovely work. It's very, you know, very good work.
Is that sad work, really?
Oh, a lot of sad cases, you know. A friend of mine's been in there 15 years, 10 years I've been a pit lady, and she died a few weeks ago, and I thought something's just gone right out of my life. I loved her so much, you know, because she was a paraplegic and laid in the one position. 15 years she'd been in the Royal, and that's a long time to be in any hospital, you know. And she was writing a thesis on Greek mythology. Oh, Joe, she was funny. I'd go around the curtain and I'd say, here I am to have a yarn. I'm doing it, I'm writing it, I don't want to be disturbed. I'll come back, Alice, come on. You know, but this is a group I think we got on 15 years, and I see her niece and nephew are going to try and get it published since she died, you know. But she was a lovable thing, you know.
I think everybody's mental picture of you, Alice, is sitting behind a piano, keyboard, thumping away, singing, not with the best voice in Newcastle.
Terrible voice.
But you can hear it all over Newcastle anyway. But you're still teaching the piano and dancing?
Yeah, still going strong.
Incredible.
I don't know how long I'll keep it up.
When did your interest in show business begin?
Well, when I was 5-year-old, they advertised for 50 children, Newcastle children, to do all the shows at the Victoria Theatre. Stiffy and Moe and all Gladys Moncrief shows, and instead of bringing children from Sydney, us kids were all trained to do the things they wanted up here, see? So Stiffy and Moe, and I was on the first time they were on the board, Stiffy and Moe, and I just imagine them babes in the wood, sitting under the big tree. And in the old days, they didn't favour any person, whether you were clever. I still had the rotten voice then. But whoever learnt the script first or learnt the words did the song. This all amounted to, you know. And Stiffy and Moe, I was so pleased with all these kids, you know. We got 10 shillings off Stiffy and 10 shillings off Moe and 10 shillings off Dixon Baker. And we thought we were made. We got 30 shillings that week. But they were lovely to work. Yeah, we sort of had lovely shows. So I was with that, how many years, till I was 15. And then I just couldn't get a job. I passed to be an art teacher, but my mother couldn't afford, it was only 6pence a week, you know, in those days. My mother was so poor, we just couldn't afford the 6pence. So I turned out to be an usherette, which I loved. Looking at people and having a lovely life, seeing them every week come into the show and seeing all these lovely artists, Gladys Moncrief and all the Gilbert and Sullivan shows, and later on films.
Where was that, the Victoria Theatre?
The Victoria Theatre, yeah. I'm so sad to see they've gone there. They're looking for theatres, and the best show in town was there because I always sat in Z row every night, the back row, and you could hear a pin drop. You know, like it was really beautiful, the sound, but you don't get that in other theatres. Not like the old days, you know, because we'd have 3 deckers in the old days, you know, the gods. That was 6pence, and the middle part was a shilling. And what did we charge downstairs? I think 1 and 6 downstairs. That was in the old days.
There's the story about you that I can quite believe, actually, but you're going to have to just tell me whether it's true or not. The days of the Victoria Theatre during the Depression, the manager sometimes just couldn't believe how many people were in the theatre. When you were on as leading usherette, this always happened apparently, and he could never reconcile the number of people in the theatre with the takings at the box office. Is that a true story? That's a true story. What happened? He came to the door one day. He said, "It's funny, Alice." He said, "We've got a full house. We've only taken £20." Oh, I said, "Well, if people depression's on and people are out of work, so I just let them in. Paper boys, anyone that didn't have any money, so I let them in." And I thought, I'm sure to get the sack over this. But from then on, he gave me 10 passes a week to give to old pensioners.
So I thought, I did a roll thing, but the seats were empty, depression was on. But those same people were our best customers after, because they certainly paid back the kindness of our management. You know, they all come back to see the show, and I was friends for life with them.
Alice, you're incredible, lady. You're an inspiration to everybody. At 70, I wish you the best of luck. You don't look any different when you were 40 or 50 or 60, I guess, and you certainly haven't changed. Congratulations on your MBE as a service to the community. It's a award that we all know is richly deserved. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, Ron. Thank you very much.
And our first program of the Valley's People. We met Matthew Tapp from Ellibana and Alice Ferguson of Meriwether, two great workers and tireless workers for the people of the Hunter Valley. I'll hope you'll join us in our next program, where we'll have two more guests in the Valley's People.